Hi everyone, and we're live, and welcome to the Omakase Webinar series. We are here today with Ivona Tau, and I'm just super excited to welcome you all to the series. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Ivona or Lola. I do marketing for Web3 companies, mainly companies that work in digital art. And the Omakase show itself has a mission to showcase digital artists, everyone who is creating digital art space. This is our webinar series, but we also have our weekly Twitter spaces, and super soon we will be launching our first podcast. And I'm going to my amazing guest, which is like Ivona Tau. I've been following you forever, I think. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what inspired you to get into this space?
Yes, of course, and thank you so much for the nice words. I started with a background in mathematics and photography, which is already quite different, I'd say, from that of many of the digital artists, but similar in a way that I was also interested in both the technical aspects, such as computer science, later on machine learning, programming, coding, and also at the same time I was exploring photography and exploring a more art related subjects. I came into AI as a way to really navigate and join those two areas, and it has been really amazing for me to have this chance to work in both art and tech.
Wow, it's actually a beautiful story. Super unusual, but I would say super handy background that you have. I'm also pulling up a few of your artworks so our viewers can see it. So, can you tell us a little bit where did your passion for art come from? Considering you have this technical, super academic background, how do you ended up working in this space?
Yeah, so I've been doing photography ever since I was 16. So I would say my passion for art started with photography, if I won't count the very early attempts at painting when I was even younger, but those were really nothing serious. I guess my passion would be the ways of exploring the world around us. And in the beginning, cameras helped me to do that. It was a way of seeing something around me, maybe something I was not really aware of in the beginning. But then when you have photos, when you come back to those moments, you very often realize so much more there was. The moment of taking photograph might be quite intuitive. You might not be thinking a lot, but then you would go back to this moment and realize there was a story, there was an emotion happening. And it's very similar right now when I'm creating digital art. So when I'm writing code, when I'm training neural networks on my photography archives, on my custom data sets, I would very often also use those tools as an exploration of some parts that are visible. If I'm photographing, for example, something around me, AI allows me to see and explore more details in those things. There might be very different from the realistic interpretation and kind of this figurative vision we have, but this very averaged version of something that is more abstract coming from AI tools. I think it also allows us to learn more about how we think, how we look at things, what patterns there are, what schemes there are. So it's really a way of exploring things around me. And I guess this is what's my main driver when I'm creating and working.
Beautiful, thank you so much. And I'm pulling back again your artworks because I want you to tell us a little bit more about your creative process. So basically, how do you create? What impact AI has in your artworks? And I know you have an amazing technical background, so you can actually guide us step by step on how it works.
Also, to explain like how neural networks work, I guess it would take so much more than an hour. But in a nutshell, the way I work, I start with data. So I start with those collections of images. Mostly, I would start with my analog photography, and I would just collect hundreds or even thousands for some of the models of photographs that would be in a similar aesthetic, maybe. It might be daylight photographs, it might be nighttime photographs. So I would choose something to train a model on. And those images here, they are coming from the series Machine Hearted. And for the series Machine Hearted, I used some of my analog photographs that were very colorful. They were taken with a couple of older cameras with Zenit, Canon A1, and Lomo LCA. And I really wanted to extract this very bright color in a more abstract way. So after training the model, it started to replicate some of the people I had in the photographs, some of the objects, but in a broader way. So afterwards, I used this model to create a story essentially, and my story with Machine Hearted was to explore the emotions. So I wanted to see how this AI model could try to navigate the very rich emotional vocabulary we have. And of course, I knew that this is a task that AI would not be able to do very well. When we think about emotions, it's one of the last kind of things that AI is not really capable at doing well. Of course, it knows some of the stereotypical facial expressions that, well, what does happy mean or what does sad mean? But when you try to go a bit deeper into those very complex emotions, such as shattered with grief or luminous sorrow, or something that is just more rich in the vocabulary, we humans tend to kind of intuitively see what such an emotion could mean. But of course, AI is not able to do that. So I use those prompts in my model to see how different emotions could be represented in this very imperfect AI model. And of course, it took some of the literal adjectives and tried to represent them just simple adjectives like shattered, luminous, dark, deep. It kind of understood them in a very direct way, and as it was not trained on very extensive emotional data sets. So I used that to this advantage to show AI's understanding of very complex emotional patterns. Again, using the imagery that was abstracted from some of my earlier work. So yeah, I guess this would be the Machine Hearted in a nutshell. The images you choose were more abstract ones, which I really like the choice you made here, because those ones are kind of I don't know, maybe less frequent all around, but the ones that I really like, and I feel that they go very deep into what is the meaning of this project and what was the goal to really abstract the meaning and find the essence of this emotional representation of this emotional charge that AI could see.
It's actually, yeah, so you've been talking about Machine Hearted, and I picked those ones, but I feel like overall the collection is extremely beautiful in terms of their color palette. Yeah, so it makes me want to live in a way, you know. So it's super bright, full. The intersection of these colors is beautiful, and I would say it's like always a good thing when an abstractive art basically has the right intersection of colors. Even like this one that I have on our background, it's like this push and pull effect, because like the red is kind of like pushing me towards it, and the blue is pushing me like against it. So can you tell us a little bit more on how you work with the colors? Because I would say it's like super memorable in your artworks, the intersection of all of these colors.
Yeah, so that one is really difficult because it would come to this very intuitive part. And when I would say that the part that influences it most is this data preparation step. So the combinations of colors that AI would see in my photographs would be the ones that it would repeat. So in this example, red and blue and some of the very strong contrast as well as high exposure would be something that it would encounter in the images itself, and simplify it in a way. So it's also interesting because very often those patterns would not be as visible in my work. There might be the combinations of some colors, but there is, of course, much more happening in the photograph. There might be some more details. But when AI is learning, it is very often trying to go in a shortcut and trying to find those, very simple relationships. So then afterwards, when I have a model that has trained on and has learned and has tried to go into those shortcuts, I would then go and try to find the most interesting things it did, because of course it can do many different shortcuts. It can just maybe generate an image that is just blue or just red, but that would not really be interesting and it would not have a very high emotional charge. So there again, it would be the role of an artist to really find the outputs that make most sense out of the very, very vast kind of possibilities that there are. So it's a very interesting relationship, because I would see where it's getting this information from, where it's learning those things from, and it sometimes might be in a way a bit different. So in this case, I see the colors, I know the photographs that those colors are coming from, but the shape itself, again, it was used for some additional language. The shape itself is something that is coming through the merger of very different things it has seen in some of the other photographs that did not have this color palette.
Beautiful. And you also previously talked about some challenges that you face when working with AI tools. And the first one was emotions, like representation of more meaningful emotions than just like sad or happy. Can you tell us a little bit more on how you overcome this, or you just omit using AI when it comes to representing emotions? And can you please tell us more if there is any other challenges you like face when you're working with AI tools?
Yeah, so in this project specifically, I would use this challenge as the meaning of the project. So really by kind of like reversing it all and using challenge as a strength, because if AI was perfect at representing emotions, I guess the project would not be interesting, because then we would have something that is a perfect representation in a way. But then again, I'm not sure I could be perfect at understanding emotions, because even as humans, I don't know a single human who is perfect at emotions. So that's just such a difficult task. And also by challenging, it means that it will forever be interesting, as this is such a subjective matter and there is no ground truth that is the same for all of us. It means that there will always be some interesting topics within the domain of emotions and their representation in humans, and how we are all different but also the same at the same but we are also similar at the same time. So I would say this challenge allows you as an artist to explore a topic and find your own angle towards it, because there's just no one truth. So there are many different ways on how to approach that. So I really used this challenge to my advantage here. When thinking about other challenges in AI, I think one of the more kind of prosaic challenges is the involvement and the change of AI tools itself. So I really like working with older AI tools. I feel that they're still underexplored. For example, models like GANs, generative adversarial networks, which don't really have any user interfaces to train them. You need to do some coding, but they provide some very beautiful, very artifactful results, which are so not perfect, but also beautiful in a way. So I would say that the tools are changing so much that as an artist working in this field, it's sometimes very difficult to just stay up to date and to resist the temptation to catch every new shiny tool. So every day you would go online and see, well, there is Stable Diffusion 3 coming around. There is, some new Sora or some different audio to video model. And you would want, of course, as a curious person, to just go on and try everything out. But as we are all humans limited to a certain number of hours a day, it's just you need to prioritize, you need to choose your tools and not just jump around with every other tool. But at the same time, you can't just stay with the same model for 10 years and work in the domain, which is such a cutting edge, and just use the same model for 10 years. It's also not possible. So you really have to balance between the two, not jump into each new shiny toy, but also not to stick in the things that are maybe getting too old or not relevant anymore. Maybe there's something that could help you make your message better, clearer, and just create better art.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I feel like as you've been talking, it's a little bit like of a personal choice when it comes to picking an AI tool. But if you're talking to like more modernized AI tools, which ones would be like your choice, the platforms that you use, or you're like sticking to the older ones that are working out specifically for your art?
Yes, so I would say that 90% of my practice, because there will always be like the 10% that is just trying out some new things, but the things that might just stay in the studio and not really see the light of the day. So 90% of my practice would be focused around GANs and custom Stable Diffusion fine-tuning. So I would do dream booth training, Laura training, and training of my own models on my own data, but the architecture would be similar to Stable Diffusion or GANs. So for GANs, it would all be Python and PyTorch library, TensorFlow library, depending on the kind of model I have. Also have a lot of my very custom scripts that I've written to create the videos. So when I create the videos, I would just use FFmpeg, which is like a console line tool for creating videos. I would just say, well, create me like from those frames, do something, and it's a very, very simple, but it means I do everything kind of in code and then just assemble the video without any post-production usually, apart from like minor exceptions. And for Stable Diffusion, so here again, Python Jupyter Notebook to do the Dreambooth training or LoRa training. And afterwards, when it's trained, I would have a Gradio running live in the cloud of this model, and just use this Gradio interface to run the model, and then to prepare some outputs. I also do some custom generative coding part, which is P5JS and processing. And for this, it's also just writing code and then checking in the web browser how the outputs look like. I like to combine the two, so there will be some parts AI, some parts generative code, and yeah, mostly this.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you have like a few passes, a few things that you use in your creative journey, which is basically photography, um, creative coding, and generative art, right? So it's like
Yeah.
a company. Wow. Okay, that's a lot. And I always, when I talk to people who have either like math or scientific background, they're talking and they feel like it is super easy what they do, but like trust me, it's not. It's like super complicated, and yeah, it's amazing. And I also know you have your PhD research in AI. So can you tell us a little bit more on the theme of your PhD, on this research in particular? Yeah.
Yes, so my PhD was focused around multimodal data representations, which translated into simple words is essentially what OpenAI was able to do with Clip, that allows tools like DALL-E or DALL-E Free or ChatGPT understanding images, is the fact that for a very long time, till a couple years ago, models for understanding text were very separate from models for understanding image. And I focused on the research that would allow to do the two things at the same time, to understand images and text, and then maybe also generate them. So I graduated a few years ago, and to be honest, my last published paper was like 3 years ago, and it corresponds to the time when a lot has changed. I mean, right now it would be quite difficult to propose something new that would be better than what OpenAI is doing. Of course, I'm not saying it's not possible if you don't work there, but the kind of level of research went very, very far. And and I hope that certainly some of the research we did at that time also helped to kind of come to the point we are right now here today. So it was quite technical. It was not directly related to my art practice. When you read some of my papers, they are, well, I would say quite boring to read, to be honest. But also they focus on image understanding, image generation for some particular use cases, such as fashion, interior design, but not really around art creation. Art creation is such a subjective matter that I left it to myself. And I don't know if doing research around art is really possible. It's quite difficult because you don't have very strict metrics. In research, it's always around numbers and how can you prove that your research is working better than something that was working before. And yeah, for art, it's just, well, some people might say this is better work, some other people might disagree. So it was something that was quite separate from my art practice. However, the knowledge of those tools, the knowledge of those methods, and the intuition I gained has definitely has allowed me to go much, much deeper into understanding how those tools work, and also how can I use those tools to my advantage to create something I really want. And when working with models, when training AI models, when something does not really go as planned, I would usually have some intuition into what direction I want to go. Or maybe if I see a data set, I might have a guess of what AI might create based on those data sets. And this knowledge definitely helps me right now. But yeah, it was not a very direct relationship in the beginning.
Thank you so much. And so, as you've been talking, I'm wondering, you've been basically doing your PhD and your like super like deep research on AI before OpenAI introduced ChatGPT to the public. And as a person like already working analyzing AI, could you predict this thing actually happening before it happened with the ChatGPT? Is it like was it like coming, or was it like a breakthrough that actually shocked you too, as well as like any normal user out there?
Yeah, so I would say that there was a shock, but the shock was much, much earlier. So the initial thing that I really thought is amazing is when OpenAI published Clip paper. So Clip was this tool that connects images and text, and it is later used in ChatGPT, in DALL-E, etc. So this happened already a few years before. And at the time, it was a huge shock. It was suddenly, oh, wow, they just did what I wanted to do. And it works so well. And I remember a lot of researchers, we were reading this and seeing that. And we were quite excited because we saw that this is a major breakthrough, something really, really huge. And And from that point on, it was quite natural to assume that something like ChatGPT would happen, because you see the tools that would allow this use case to be implemented. So then it's just a matter of time when something like this could happen. And so yeah, just seeing ChatGPT on its own, it was not such a huge shock, but because we saw GPT-1 and GPT-2, and even then it was crazy what it could do, but it was not as much public knowledge, both ChatGPT-1 and GPT-2. But it was already quite amazing. I would say it was just with GPT-3 and later on GPT-4 that kind of it came into much broader circle than just, our little scientific conference attendees kind of circle that was very small for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like the main idea is to making it like accessible to everyone, and honestly, like impact on each like personal individual life. Any of such AI tools that are like publicly available, it's like crazy. It saved, I think like it saved months of my life in a way, like writing, checking, and yeah, it's amazing. But I feel like it's been a little bit too much on AI, and I just want to go back to your artistic journey. And you've been exhibiting globally at Scope, Art Basel Miami Beach, Christie's New York. And so, can you tell us more about maybe some memorable moments of your artistic journey? Um, yeah.
Yeah, of course. My favorite ones. Well, yeah, those you mentioned are definitely some of the milestones. And when you grow as an artist, there are always some things that you dream of doing, and some of the events that are just more important than others, both in terms of personal meaning, but also in terms of the opportunities that come with them. So definitely the first one was the Sotheby sale back in 2021, which at the time there were not as many digital artists selling with Sotheby's. I mean, even today, I mean, it's still not so much, so it's still quite an achievement to have. And back then, it was the traditional art collector who purchased my work for, I think, around $20,000. That was then the biggest sale for me, of course. And after that, a lot of recognition came, a lot of opportunities and connections. But so my favorite ones would definitely be the ones where I was able to participate and see the people coming to the show. So Art Basel Miami, I was able to go there in person, to be part of the Tezos booth there, and to really also see those people, not just on the internet seeing that, well, there's a traditional art collector who's interested in my work, but really talking face to face to those people and seeing an interest in my work. And that was the most moving experiences for me, the most personal, and the ones that made me feel that what I do is really something I want to keep doing. So moving on, there were many of those very huge milestones, and right now I'm still super happy about my latest milestone, which was the acquisition of my works in collaboration with Obvious, that were done by Heck Museum and Francisco Carolinum, which for digital artists it's sort of a holy grail. So the knowledge that my works are in collections of museums that are reputable around the world in the many of digital art has been something that just brings me a lot of joy and kind of confirmation of that what I do is important and it's worthwhile doing. So yeah, it's been really amazing to have so many milestones like that and many more.
It's beautiful and many more to come for sure. Yeah, and so you've been talking, and I am thinking, do you have any like mainnet blockchain preference where you exhibit your artworks? Is it only Tezos, or is it maybe like Ethereum? Does it matter for you? If it does, like in what ways?
Yes, so far I've only did works on Tezos and Ethereum. With Tezos, I started out and I was mostly publishing there back when it was the more ecological blockchain. Of course, when Ethereum moved to proof of stake, it kind of changed the way I think about around Ethereum. So I, of course, started doing a lot more on Ethereum. Also, it being kind of like mainstream for mainstream blockchain, I'd say, for art. I still love Tezos, but I don't do as much on it as before, which I hope to maybe change because it's something that I feel also very sentimental, having published there my first works and also knowing many, many amazing people, artists, and curators from this, let's call it scene of Tezos, which I think is a very beautiful group and community of people, which is really important. Ethereum is much broader, it's much more mainstream. So there is everything. There is collectibles, there is art, there is all kinds of things, and Tezos seems to be more focused around art, which I find really beautiful. But yeah, nowadays it would mostly be Ethereum, and yeah, or Tezos, and to no other blockchains I have tried doing anything so far yet. Base on Ethereum is an interesting new experiment, the layer two, which I already had one piece on, and might do something more in the future.
Yeah, it's actually super interesting. And yeah, I completely agree. I also feel like every time you open any of Tesla's like marketplaces, F6 hash or object, it's always about like super high quality artworks, normally like one on one, but they're extremely like it's super artsy. Ethereum needs a little bit like of your time and research when it comes to finding something like truly artsy and not only like collectibles. Um, and in terms of base, actually, I made like two purchases, just sharing my experience, and I find it extremely annoying that you have like always to like convert your Ethereum to base, and it just takes some time and effort. But this is like the one and only like super tiny disadvantage. Um, yeah,
Yes.
that I found. And how was your like first experience using base?
Well, yeah, this is definitely true what you say. Quite annoying that you have to convert this amount and also to switch networks. But I mean, the huge advantage is that the gas costs are so much less, which definitely I think kind of overthrows those little disadvantages. Um, and yeah, so far it's been yeah, quite good. Apart from yeah, disadvantages you mentioned.
Thank you so much. And I'm moving like to the like final questions of this webinar, and I wanted you to share a little bit, like some tips for emerging artists who are either willing to join the Web3 space, or who are already here and just starting their journey. What those tips would be?
Yes, so that is something that I've been thinking for some time, especially trying to imagine myself at the beginning of my journey, what was the most important thing to me back then. And I would say that the thing that made me move forward is the playness. So don't forget about having great time. Don't treat it as a business. Don't treat it as something too serious. Don't forget to play around with your practice, to try out new things. There is this very amazing start at the beginning of your journey where you can do everything because nothing is expected from you. And as you go on and as you succeed, as you grow, this is something that will change. So beginners have actually this amazing advantage that they often forget about, that they are just allowed to do everything and just experiment and try to find your voice, and just not to stick with the one tool or the one thing they've been doing.
Wow, thank you so much. It's super valuable piece of advice. Yeah, for sure. Experimenting is key. And so can you hint us on what's upcoming next? What are you doing in a few months? And maybe any upcoming drops that we should stay tuned on?
Yeah, of course. So in terms of collections, I've just published this collaboration with Obvious that I mentioned, that was acquired by a few museums. That, well, just finished working on that. So still, living with it. I'm also not the sort of person who finishes one collection and just forgets about it. So I'm still doing a couple of interviews around it, still doing a couple of publications, write-ups, preparing a website page around it, and also engaging with the collectors, the community, to kind of see how the AI index is moving on forward, how it's going to change. It's a very different project also in a way that I don't know what's going to happen, because we played around with this idea what public sentiment around AI is going to be. And the pieces itself, they depend on public sentiment around AI. And I don't know how it's going to move on in a few months. So in sort of way, it's an ongoing and living project. So I'm living it right now. And then in the next plans in July, I'll be talking at Generative Art Summit, which I'm really, really excited about, because there'll be a lot of pioneers who have been doing generative art for 50 years. So pioneers meeting younger generation in a dialogue around generative art that I'm really, really proud to be part of. And the next big project that I've actually been already working on for half a year, and it's still a few months to go. It will debut in December, so around Art Basel. It's a project that is also quite personal to me, because it involves some of my family archives and the very old footage that my grandfather was doing in the 60s. So this is the kind of data that's, again, personal, but also cross-generational. So it's a sort of a collaboration with my previous generations. So it's still in the works, still in preparations, and it will be ready in December.
Wow, I cannot wait to see the last project you've been mentioning, the collection of your grandfather's artworks, and will it be centered around Vilnius, right, as the city where it took place, the events, or you cannot hint right now?
Definitely some of it will be around Vilnius, because it's where most of this footage, so it's not all of the footage, but definitely most of the footage is coming from around Vilnius. So even though it's more involving humans too, but I think that the city will definitely shine through. I don't know how much. We'll see that, because works in progress are already. I have some models trained and I have some initial results. So there might be some pieces of architecture. It's very interesting to see for me too. Even when I was playing with the data, how the city has changed, and I've not been alive when those photos were taken, and some parts of the city have definitely changed, but others, they remain very similar, which is, I guess, the beauty of the old towns, that there are usually no new buildings around. But some of it will be there too.
Yeah, I think Vilnius actually. I just visited a few months, and the old town kept it its beautiful heritage. But I also checked out the modern neighborhoods, and what I loved, is that every scene is super integrated into old tones that Vilnius already has. So whenever you create a modern architecture, it is a part of an old, and it's like playing together. And if I'm not mistaken, there is one theater which is actually like a modern building integrated in between an old city center street. And I took a photo because this is what I'm from Ukraine, and this is where Ukraine doesn't work this good when it comes to modern architecture. It's either something like super high, which is definitely not like playing around with an old city that we already have. So yeah, Vilnius is a beautiful town. I'm super excited about your upcoming project. And I also really want to thank you for joining us today. Your experience, your insights, and your creative process is just surreal. Thank you so much for sharing it all today. And please keep us posted on everything that is coming up next.
Thank you so much. And it has been an absolute pleasure to be part of this. Wishing you best of luck with the Omakase show and looking forward to the next episodes.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. I think I was frozen for a second. Have a lovely
No
day.
worries.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.